I've been using Tesla's Autopilot feature for over a year now, and in today's video I wanted to discuss what I love about it, as well as a couple of drawbacks. First things first, Autopilot features, not just with Tesla, but with the other car companies, they are making drivers safer. That is just a statistical fact. So for every billion miles driven, if you're using an autopilot type of feature, you're getting in less accidents. That's the statistics. Why is this? First of all, a autopilot feature has sensors that are looking in all directions at all times. As a human, I can only look forward, check my rearview mirror, check my side mirrors, do a head check, look at my blind spots. I'm constantly scanning. But a autopilot car has sensors that are looking in all directions at once. Also, they're looking at night using LiDAR and infrared technology so they can see further than the human eye can at night. So that means if a deer jumps out in front of you at night, an autopilot car is going to see that deer long before you do, and it's going to start braking and responding to that situation much faster than you. Also, it really has no blind spots. So when you are looking in your mirrors, you're not seeing cars that are in your blind spots, but autopilot feature type cars do not have blind spots. And I just touched on something that I really like about the autopilot, which is it responds faster to potential hazards. So if a car in front of you acts erratically and starts braking, you as a human, as long as you've got enough distance, you can respond, but your autopilot feature is going to detect that much quicker, and it's going to start braking much quicker. So it's just going to help you be a safer driver. And because I've been able to observe this feature for well over a year now, I get to see how they're making changes to the software. So when you buy a car with an autopilot feature, at least with Tesla, you get software updates. So this means how the car did autopilot last month, well, if they update the software, then the autopilot actually behaves a little differently. And this is great because they can constantly be evolving their autopilot to become better. And I'm definitely noticing things getting better. When I would drive under an overpass, sometimes it would see that overpass and worry that it was something that it was going to hit, so it would brake really hard. And they fixed that 6 to 8 months ago, so that never happens anymore. So that was just a software update they did that taught the car how to see an overpass properly. It's also gotten a lot better. It used to be very intense about braking, and it would err on the side of caution, and it would brake a lot more often than it needed to, just because it was tentative and trying to put safety above all else. And now I've noticed that it's not doing that nearly as much. So they're probably still prioritizing your safety, but they're not needing to brake in as many situations as they used to. So I've definitely noticed steady improvements month to month. So I really love the software update style. And that actually brings me to one of the potential gotchas about this. You know, anyone who's updated software knows that bugs get introduced. And it's a terrifying prospect that some bug might get introduced into your software. So one month your autopilot is working fine, and then the next month a bug happens that potentially could put you in harm's way. As far as I know, that hasn't happened yet, but with software, that seems like it's always a possibility. And so that does make me a little hesitant to use autopilot exclusively. I like to stay as an engaged driver using autopilot as a way of making me a safer driver. And that brings me to another point, which is compromised drivers. I think autopilot feature is going to save so many lives, because if you have a compromised driver, a driver who is either tired, or maybe they're distracted because they're texting, or they're distracted because they've got kids that are playing and they're looking at the road but having to look away. Another form of compromised driver is someone who's on medication. Maybe they're a bit groggy, or maybe they've been drinking alcohol or other substances. So these types of drivers, I think autopilot is really going to help make safer. So I'm really excited about that aspect of the autopilot. It's just the overall safety. So you're taking a driver who might be decent, or maybe they're compromised and not so decent, and you're making them a much safer driver. And as a motorcyclist, I would love if all cars that had autopilot feature had, say, a blue light on the back, and the blue light would be on if the autopilot was engaged. And what I love about that idea, if I was on my motorcycle, I would exclusively follow those cars, because they can see me. They have the autopilot engaged. They're not going to do erratic things. So I would just follow those cars, and that would feel much safer than following a human driver, where the human driver may not recognize you or may not see you, or may suddenly come into your lane because they don't really think you're a threat, and so they just move into your lane and you have to get out of their way. And this brings me to a gripe that I think they'll figure out. So as I said before, software updates making this feature not only more safe, but more comfortable for the driver, less intense braking. I noticed the braking itself is getting smoother with the software updates. So the braking used to be kind of sudden, and now it feels a lot more gentle. So they've figured out a lot of things. But one thing I don't like just yet is, let's say you've got a few lanes of traffic, and you've got a big 18-wheeler, truck here. Generally, what I do as a driver is I will have my vehicle a little further away from them. But right now, the Tesla Autopilot really puts you in the middle of the lane, the exact middle of the lane. It's really good at keeping you in the middle of the lane. What I don't like about this is I do like to actually hug the side of a lane if I want to give, say, an 18-wheeler, a big truck, if I want to give them more room, I'll move away from them, still in the lane, but I will hug towards this side of the lane. Again, that's something that with software updates, they might choose to make this behavior happen. Another thing that'll happen is with the autopilot feature, the car, let's say there's a car here and a car here, let's say this is a lane. The Tesla Autopilot feature might put you kind of right here, which I think is a bad place to be. You don't really want to be trapped. You can't really get out, and then you're right behind a big truck. So this is just a situation I, as a driver, would not put myself in, but the Autopilot feature doesn't really think about that. It'll just put you, it won't get you too close to the truck, but it will sort of lead you into what I call a trap, where you're behind this big truck and you've got nowhere to go. So I would have opted to take a different route. Again, this is all stuff that they can fix with software, whether they choose to or not, and I think they will choose to fix that. So my only concern about Autopilot is the software bug issue. That's why I think I'm going to continue, at least for now, to stay as a very engaged driver. But there's no question, with Autopilot on and all those sensors, it is helping make you a safer driver, whether you're already a safe driver or whether you're sometimes a compromised driver. Perhaps at 5 p.m. when you're working through rush hour traffic, you're a little tired, other people are making erratic moves. The Autopilot feature is really going to help you avoid collisions in this case. Thank you.